What do these cancellations mean in the context of the future of television programming and judgments? Brent Bozell is the president of the Parents Television Council. Paul Levinson, chair of the Communication and Media Studies Group at Fordham University. And Brett, I will start with you. Your group tends to skew conservative. You tend to be among the first to object to things that you believe are either indecent or not fit for broadcast, and yet you feel that this is a bad decision.
Yeah, I do. Look, let's put things in perspective. One, Saving Private Ryan is a terrific movie. Two, it's utterly inappropriate for children. Three, I wish they had bleeped out the obscenities. They could have done that. Four, I wish they'd put it on at 9 o'clock, not 8 o'clock. But that being said, just as NBC handled Schindler's List so well, and CBS handled the documentary on 9/11 so well, so responsibly, I think ABC could and would probably do this just as responsibly. And you know what? At the end of the day, Western civilization would go on.
So Brett, and Paul, I'm going to get to you in a second, but Brett, what are we reacting to? What is the world that we're in right now that we've come to this?
Well, you know, that's the interesting point. Supposedly there's this fear of the FCC, and yet what is being forgotten in this is that the FCC not only didn't penalize ABC, but there were people who complained last time, and the FCC has already ruled that it's not indecent to do this. The FCC can't overrule itself.
Paul, when you heard this, the first thought that crossed your mind?
Mr. Bozell and his group are entirely responsible for this outrage. They've created this climate of fear in which the FCC levies an outlandish fine on CBS for that split second of Janet Jackson's breast. And so now all the television stations are running scared, afraid that they're going to be fined in the same way. We need to recognize that these kinds of fines are utterly unconstitutional. They go against the First Amendment, the supreme law of the land. The First Amendment was put there to protect the right of communication that people might indeed find offensive, but other people might not find offensive. So Mr. Bozell and his friends are more than welcome not to watch this movie, not to listen to the language that he finds so offensive. Language, incidentally, that it's okay for the vice president in the halls of the Senate to curse out a senator. That's okay. But God forbid a word like that be aired on network television during prime time, and suddenly it's a federal case.
You know, I don't think your guest heard a word I said. Beyond that, he doesn't know what he's talking about when he talks about a First Amendment right to do indecent things over the airwaves. Sir, you don't have that First Amendment right. You know that. The Supreme Court has said unequivocally that these airwaves belong to the public. No, we didn't cause this. We didn't cause Janet Jackson to do what she did. What a preposterous statement you're making.
The Supreme Court has never defined indecency. In fact, they haven't even defined obscenity in any kind of reasonable way. They've said obscenity is what a community thinks is obscene. Well, America is a very big community. It has a lot of different people. It has red states and blue states and purple states and all kinds of people with all kinds of opinions and attitudes.
Again,
and what the First Amendment does is it guarantees the right of people to watch what they...
Brett, let Paul finish, and I'll get you in here. Paul, finish.
What the First Amendment does is it guarantees the right of people to speak and hear and listen and read what they want to. If Mr. Bozell doesn't like something, no one is forcing him and his group to watch it or read it or listen to it. But he has no right, and nor does the FCC have any right to prevent other Americans from seeing a fine movie like this or indeed any other movie.
Paul, let me just be clear. Brett is on the record saying he's in favor of this movie being aired. With that said, I think you bring up an interesting point, and Brett, I would like you to address it. It is this: whether it's you or your group or other groups that are perhaps either have a more conservative view than your own or in some ways perhaps are similar to your own, to what extent do you or do those types of groups bear responsibility for inflaming a culture of fear that now creates decisions like the one we're currently dealing with?
Well, that's a heck of a loaded question. Look, I want to go back to what your guest said a minute ago, because he's got his facts backwards. The FCC, or the Supreme Court, has defined what obscenity is, and the Supreme Court has defined decency as community standards. He got it backwards. The Supreme Court has said unequivocally that you cannot hide behind the First Amendment with the public airways because they belong to the public. They've said this. You can't deny this. You can't argue this. Now, the PTC,
Brent,
the Parents Television Council, is not a conservative organization.
Here's the thing. Do you believe that your types of groups have contributed to the culture of fear that led to today's decision?
Why is it a culture of fear? Why isn't it a culture of responsibility that the affiliates and the networks might finally be taking some responsibility over the airwaves that they don't have a right to use, they have a privilege, and they have been abusing that privilege? Why is it a culture of fear? Why isn't it responsibility?
Well, and I say it's a culture of fear only because the networks themselves, the affiliates themselves, said that they're not going to air a movie that you actually believe ought air because they are afraid.
Well, can I just make one point? I assume that Mr. Bozell can read English. The First Amendment says Congress shall make no law abridging freedom of speech or press. So what does no law mean? It means that the FCC, Congress, no one has the right to censor or to discourage someone from communicating. If Mr. Bozell feels so strongly about this, I suggest he try to repeal the First Amendment, and I doubt that he would succeed in that.
I would suggest, sir, that you read the Pacifica decision and understand what you're talking about before you go on the air making preposterous statements.
Well, the Pacifica decision was wrong.
All right, we'll leave it there. This is obviously an issue not going anywhere. Brent Bozell,
Absolutely.
we are grateful for your time. Thank you,
you.
Paul Levinson. Same to you.